You want everybody to hear my melodious voice. Okay.
Right.
Uh, all other sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All other sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla Dongwa Pe Draha No Par Pe Ge Parpa Dang Tam Che Kien Pe Bardu Cho Par Pa Tam Che Kiso Pe Mana Kadang Yam Pe Sem Chen Tam Che Dewa Dang Den Dug Nyao Dang Drill Nur Du La Na Me Pa Yang Dag Par Zog Pe Jang Chup Rinpoche To Par Jang. Mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che du sang ma kye ki bardu, luna ki sum ge wala kol. Ma she bardu luna ki sum ge wala kol. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang da sangi bardu luna ki sum ge wala kol. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drinchen Sawa Dang Yu Parche Pe Palden Lama Dampa Namla Kapsu Chio Yidam Kyukogi La Sok Namla Kapsu Chio Sangye Chom Dende Namla Kapsu Chio Dampe Cho Namla Kapsu Chio Pak Pe Gendu Namla Kapsu Chio Awo Kandro Chokyong Sung Me So Ye Sheki Ken Dang Dempa Namla Kasu Chio. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhists embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhists embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish stages of the path. Jiang Chu Ning Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kiao Su Chi Cho Dang Jiang Chu Senpai Yi Sok Lang De Shin Kiao Su Chi Jitar Nangi De She Ki Jiang Chu Tuk Ni Ke Pa Dam Jiang Chu Senpai La Pa La De dagrin shin ne patar. De shin drola pendandu. Jang chub semni kye gi shin. De shin du ni la pala. Rinpa shin du la pargi. Oh. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Soki Chognam La Janchup Bardu Dagni Kyasu Chi Dagi Jinso Ki Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Shok. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering, the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Mana kadanya pe samchantam che diwadang dewe gyudang den par gyur chi. Dugnyao dang dugnyao ki gyudang drawa gyur chi. Dugnyao me pe dewa dang mi drawa gyur chi. Ne ring chang dang yi dang drawe tam yom la ne par gyur chi. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me, grant me the complete satisfaction, grow with me, be loving towards me, grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind, heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, our blessed one, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me, grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you, thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Tishcha Drido Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sitsam Shriyam Kurupam Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Bhasri Mame Munsa Bhasri Bhave Mahasamaya Sattva Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tisha Drido Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anurakto Me Baba Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sisam Shriyam Kurupam Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Bhasri Mame Munsa Bhasri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Om Bhasra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Basra Saplateno Pa Tishta Drido Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anurakto Me Baba Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sitsam Shriya Kurupam Ahahaho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Bhasri Mame Munsa Bhasri Bhava Ma Asamaya Sattva. Uh, Finally, the Sagarimati requested sutra. Likewise, be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so when I'm victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food, and drink peacefully. Enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddhas. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated.
Thank you very much, Barney. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank everybody on YouTube that's watching this later. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments you'd like to make or questions about anything that we've talked about thus far? Okay. Then we left off with 4.26. We've been talking about chapter 4 in the Lalitavistara Sutra, which is, and chapter 4 is the gateway to the Dharma. We've been talking about the different gateways to the Dharma, to the light of the Dharma. So we had talked about the 5 powers of the mind. We talked about the 7 branches of awakening. We've talked about the Noble Eightfold Path. And now we are 4.27. And these are 4 gateways to the enlightened mind, 4 gateways to Buddha mind. So I'll read these. It says, first, it says, the mind of awakening is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it ensures the continuity of the light of the 3 jewels. The next one says, intention is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to lack of desire for the lesser vehicle. And the next one says, superior intention is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to a distinct focus on the vast Buddha Dharma. And the last one says, application is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the perfection of all virtuous qualities. So I gave these a general heading of these 4 as the 4 gateways to Buddha mind, to the mind of the Buddha. We talk about the body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, and this specifically is toward the mind of the Buddha. So the first one again, which is actually number 83 of the 108 gateways. So this is number 83, is the mind of awakening is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it ensures the continuity of the line of the 3 jewels. So to me, this is the natural flow. The natural flow that happens as we are developing the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, that with the body of the Buddha, with the physicality of the Buddha, with the right intention of the intellect of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, that the natural flow then leads us right to the mind of awakening, which is the gateway to realizing the body, speech, and mind of the Guru, of the Buddha. So, would anybody like to comment on this? Body, speech, and mind as the natural flow, the mind of awakening is the gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it ensures the continuity of the line of the 3 jewels. Yes, go ahead.
So when I read the 3 jewels, I thought Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. interpreting them as the body, speech, and mind?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So does that make sense to you?
It seems like in the Tibetan tradition, I mean, in my experience has always been the three jewels are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, but I know that when we do our prayers at our last prayer, we say Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and we say body, speech, and mind. So they almost become like interchangeable. So I don't have a problem with that interpretation.
Okay. Very
I
good.
thought I actually thought they were interchangeable. Like they each concretely and symbolically represented, like if you did like a conceptual and abstract translation, that's how I've always thought of it when I'm doing my prayers. I don't know if anyone else had the same contemplation, but Kunga, to your point, that's what I've always thought.
Yes, thank you. I mean, that's the way I've always understood it, that we're talking about the body of the Buddha. The body of the Buddha is the Sangha, and the speech of the Buddha is the Dharma, and the mind of the Buddha is is at the heart center, is the mind of the Buddha. So the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya would be the intellectualization. The Dharmakaya would be the truth body. The enjoyment body would be the Sambhogakaya, which is the subtle enjoyment body. And the emanation body is the physical body of the Buddha, the Sangha. So yes, so that's how I've always looked at it. That's the way it's been taught to me anyway. And the mind of awakening, so the mind of awakening to this is a gateway, is the point here, is that we enter this continuity of the three jewels. So that's why we repeat it over and over again when we do our prostrations, when we are, when we approach, when we see the Buddha image, to do the three prostrations is a support for that. At the end, when we do our practices, we do that again as a mind to kind of seal that mind of awakening, to be aware of that, to stabilize that. Anybody else have a comment about that? Does it work for you? Do you find that you do that? Do you instinctively do that? Or is it something that you've had to kind of cultivate?
No, I think, well, it's instinctive, but to me, I think you're all correct. The thing for me is that the continuity and the line of the three jewels, which is something that's very important to me and very real to me in that, we're studying a document right now in which Buddha Shakyamuni, before he got here, sort of firmed up how he was going to, bring the Dharma to earth. And since the Buddha, there is a line that stretches from person to person and has for the last 2,600 years. And Buddhism that's how Buddhism is carried, right? So if you killed all the Buddhists on earth and the books were still around, would Buddhism still exist? No, actually it wouldn't. And that is the position that the lamas will take, that no, you can't. It has to be all three, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the Sangha is us, but it also includes every one of us going back that whole time. And so to me, this is really profound.
Is it a lineage? Do you think of that line as a lineage line?
It's more than a lineage. No, actually something is being carried through mind to mind to mind, because we're all Dharmakaya. They're linking to that. And, we have this opportunity because Buddhism exists in the world and Buddhists exist in the world. and we have fantastic teachers and fantastic, exemplars who we practically worship because they're just so wonderful. But that's the reality of it. That's the reality of Buddhism. It's mind to mind to mind. It's completely experiential. And that is how, you said body, speech, mind, Buddha, Dharma, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That's how those things are together, are tied together. That's why they're equivalent.
Would you say that the mind of awakening is the awakening to the phenomenal nature and the absolute nature of this line of the three jewels, the line to the three jewels?
Well, it's relative and absolute, yeah. Yeah, it's like you're on a team. You're part of the puzzle, right? You're on the bus. We can use lots of metaphors. We know we're individuals, and we know that we're not individuals. We know that my mind is your mind. That extends to everybody that has gone before us. They're real. These people, when they're on Earth, and then they died, and they may have come back or they may not have, depending on who they were. But it's real, and it's just recognizing that is the nature of us.
Okay, does anybody have any other comment about this? This awakening, this mind of awakening to, what is it, the possibility of all things, or the truth of all things? That we see that everything is true. Even the difficult things are true. The negative things are true. The positive things are true. The mind of awakening and seeing this is part of the phenomenal nature, which all comes out of, is an emanation, is the display of the absolute nature of the Dharmakaya. So the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya are displays, intellectual displays and physical displays of that Dharmakaya, that truth body, that emanation truth body that Debbie was just saying right now. It's all, you can't separate it. It's all part of the same thing. Okay. So contemplating that and thinking about that is the key element here for us, because what we're trying to do is to recognize that Buddha mind within ourselves. And so the mind of awakening, so that sense of awakening to this is a key element. That and if we're not getting it, then we gotta realize, oh well, I'm still to some degree have some veils over my eyes. I still to some degree have some sleep in my eyes, and that's okay, as long as we're continuing to work towards the total awakening. So the next one, line 84, says, intention is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to a lack of desire for the lesser vehicles. So intention makes a difference. So if we have the mind of awakening, or we don't have the mind of awakening, but we have the intention, means that we're moving forward. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be trouble. I'm going to keep moving ahead no matter what. It says intention is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to a lack of desire for the lesser vehicles. So what are the lesser vehicles? The lesser vehicles would be the Hinayana or the Mahayana. The vehicles, when we talk about the vehicles, the Hinayana and the Mahayana. The Mahayana is the middle way, and it's through that intention of having of working towards that. The Hinayana is the discipline to keep our wheels on the track, so to speak. So our intention is for that, but it says it leads to a lack of desire for the lesser vehicle, that we don't have to remain in the lesser vehicle. The lesser vehicle being the Hinayana, being the selfish, if you will, the selfish liberation, your own personal liberation, not considering the liberation of others. So in the Mahayana, then we think about the benefit for other beings, that everything that we're doing is for the benefit of other beings. In the Hinayana, it is for our own soul benefit. So that in itself is a selfishness. So Kunga has his hand up. Did you want to add something to that or say something about that?
I think you clarified. I was just thinking that since it just says lesser vehicle, I just thought it applied to the Hinayana and not to the Mahayana as well. Just distinguishing between those two versus the all three of the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. Would you agree?
Well, yeah. Do you think that they're all three, all those vehicles are a path to liberation?
Well, I think that's the traditional teaching, is that all three are, in that, but that the types of liberation are different. Like you said, the focus of the Hinayana is more on the personal liberation. The Mahayana adds the aspiration for the benefit of all beings, which the Vajrayana shares. And I think the Mahayana and Vajrayana difference is just in a mode of practice rather than a different aspiration.
Okay.
Okay, let me add my 2 cents here. I'm trying to make sense of all 4 lines here, including the lines we haven't gotten to yet. The mind of awakening, of course, would be bodhicitta. Bodhi is mind awakening, and chitta is mind. The mind of awakening would be bodhicitta. Intention, I suppose, is the intention to follow the higher vehicles rather than the lower vehicles. So that would mean to attain, and the intention to attain enlightenment as a Buddha. Now, it's not clear to me, the next line, what the difference between intention and superior intention are. The only way I can make sense of that, but I'm not sure it's correct, is that we have 3 paths: the path of the disciples, the path of the Pratyeka Buddhas, and the path of the fully enlightened Buddhas. So we're referring to either of the 2 vehicles in the line on intention, and strictly to fully enlightened Buddhas in the 3rd line, superior intention. But that doesn't seem quite correct to me, but it's the only way I can make sense of these 4 lines. An application, of course, is actually more than intention. It's actually carrying out the intention, of course. So that's what I get out of these 4 lines. And I have to say that it's interpretation. I've never gotten an explanation of this. So it's strictly my interpretation, but I figure it's as valuable as anybody else's interpretation here. So.
Well, let's talk about the superior intention for a minute. So the superior intention as a gateway, leading to the distinct focus on the vast Buddha Dharma. So would that be the Dharmakaya? Would that be the absolute nature of the Buddha? And in that sense, being able to witness or be part of, to recognize that there is phenomenal nature, which is an aspect of the absolute nature, to be able to see it as the Buddha sees it, to be able to recognize it as the Buddha does. Is that the superior intention, to become, to be Buddha? In the Mahayana, would it then be fair to say that in Mahayana is a devotion to, as a bodhisattva, to be able to dedicate and help all sentient beings, all other sentient beings, to attain enlightenment. And in the Vajrayana, then that is to be the wisdom of the Buddha, to be the Buddha, to recognize that absolute nature, to know that absolute nature, and as knowing that, to be able to recognize the phenomenal nature through the superior intention to wish to do that.
Well, we're going to have a little disagreement here because this is a Mahayana text, and I don't think anything that you'll read in here really will refer directly to the Vajrayana. So if you interpret one line as referring to the Vajrayana, I think that's probably well, it's your interpretation, but I don't think it was the original intention of the text, because this is a Mahayana sutra and not a Vajrayana tantra. So now, as I said, the distinction between intention and superior intention escapes me, but superior intention clearly here refers to attaining the intention to gain the full enlightenment of Buddhahood, fully enlightened Buddhahood, which is vast. But it's my interpretation, and I'm not 100% sure of it, so I would be welcome to hear other people's interpretations as well.
Well, just I agree with you in both cases that it's, you're stating your interpretation, and I'm stating mine, but mine anyway is always is subject to change, because I'm looking at it from a particular point of view, and I'm certainly capable of being incorrect in that, but it all depends on what point of view says that's incorrect or correct. So it's, to me, these are food for meditation. So in any case, in the best case or the worst case, it's still food for meditation. Would anybody else like to add something? Kunga, you got your microphone on.
Thank you. So I was just noticing that with the intention, it says it leads to a lack of desire for the lesser vehicle, and then superior attention leads to a distinct focus on the vast Buddha Dharma. So it seems like just a moderation of the attention, right? So one intention is just strong enough not to want to have desire for the Hinayana, the personal enlightenment, but the other intention is this much more focused, trying to understand the vast Buddha Dharma. So one is kind of just enough in attention so you're not going the wrong way, and the other one's like, this is the road you should go, and this is the goal you're trying to reach. So that's how it reads to me. It's like this more specific direction in the next one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for me, that supports the the point of view that that would be the Vajrayana, because there's more of a focus on the Buddha Dharma itself.
Well, just to jump in, no, I agree with Bernie, but one of the things that it's not particularly clear, because this is a Mahayana text, right? For Mahayana, especially for Vajrayana, the secret ingredient is bodhicitta. The mind of enlightenment is bodhicitta, right? The lesser vehicle is the cessation of self, that you kill all your emotions and you kill your ignorance, and then you have reached the nirvana that you can in a human life. Whereas bodhicitta it's a higher plane of consciousness. It's a different type of consciousness. And when it takes somebody over, like Garchen and pushing, there is this amazing transformation. But at this point that these sutras are, well, I don't know when it was written, because I know things were written later, but I don't recall seeing anything about bodhicitta. it's probably in there, the vast Buddha Dharma. That sounds like it's getting closer to that all-inclusiveness that you're talking about, Lance. But yeah.
Well, it's a good point. If you go back to the introduction, the very beginning of this book that we're looking at, it gives a definition here in the first sentence. It says the play in full Lalitavistara is without a doubt one of the most important sutras within Buddhist Mahayana literature. So it's classifying right there as Mahayana text. Okay, so as you guys point out, I don't know if we can come to a definitive interpretation of this, but it is a gateway. We're moving in that direction. Perhaps as we get closer to it, it becomes more apparent to us. The application, if we go to the next line, let's see what that does for us. The application is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the perfection of all virtuous qualities. So this to me is the incarnate truth, the truth body that is the deity yoga. It is the intention of the deity to become bodhicitta, to be bodhicitta. The application of it is the gateway. So being able to apply this in everything that we do, everything that we think, our practices and meditations and so on. So any comment? Yes, Kunga.
I think of that line as an introduction to the next 7, because it talks about application. It leads to the perfection of all the virtuous qualities. Then 87 through 93 are all the perfections, the 7 paramitas. So I think of that 86 as kind of the natural introduction to the next 7. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else like to comment?
He's got a point.
Well,
I just want to say maybe it's one of the most important ones, because if you don't apply any of the teachings, they're meaningless. They're nonsense. They have to be applied, and without application, you may be reinterpreting them, like a misinterpreting, right? Like you have to apply what you learn and see the result, and then you're getting it or not. Like, are you on the right way or not the right way? Are you moving forward or staying in place or moving backwards?
okay, thank
Not
you.
a sermon, just a thought, as they say.
Okay, no, it's perfectly good. I mean, that's what we're looking at here, and that's the purpose of contemplation, is to be able to look at all these possibilities, and then to finally be able to just rest them without necessarily a conclusion, and know that they are all on the path. The perfection is recognizing the imperfection of being on the path, and being able to attain the view that all this is all within phenomenal nature. Phenomenal nature has all these myriad ways of views. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So if we maybe come back to this, But if we move on to 4.28, then 4.28 has 6 points within it. And my classification of that, my giving a general heading to that, I saw that as the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas. So the first one being generosity, the second one being discipline, the third one being patience, the next one being diligence, the one after that being concentration, and the next one after that, perfection of knowledge. So these are the 6 paramitas. So if we go back to the beginning of this, so it would be line 87, the first one on 4.28, it says, the perfection of generosity is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it leads to the sublime mark and signs, to the complete purity of the Buddha realms, and to the thorough ripening of those sentient beings that are greedy. So it's got 2 ideas there, 2 points. It says the thorough ripening of those sentient beings that are greedy, but also to the complete purity of the Buddha realms. So not just as it applies to greed, but as it applies to ignorance, as it applies to hatred, desire, jealousy. So to all of those, so generosity, so all the generosity that we do to overcome those poisons and the 84,000 emotions that are the results of all the myriad combinations of those 6 poisons, or 5 poisons, excuse me. Any comments about that? Ganga?
That the fact that it said leads to the sublime marks and sign, the complete purity of the Buddha realms, in addition to just overcoming greed, reminds me of the idea that all of the paramitas are interconnected to each other. So you, by following any one of them, you kind of have to realize all of them. And that's, so the idea that you could, any one of these, you could say the same thing basically about the first 2 lines, that they would help you to purify all Buddha fields and also lead to sublime marks and signs. That's just one of the, that's just an attribute of developing the perfections. That's how I've read that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I agree with what you just said, that they're interconnected. It's kind of like a matrix, that they're all interconnected with each other. But at the same time, for our study, for our being able to apprehend the meaning of them, we take them in a linear fashion and be able to, to focus in on the meaning of each individual one. But as they actualize with each other, it is like a matrix. They are interconnected. Maybe it'd be better to just look at all these in their entirety and not break each one apart. But let's read the next line, 88. It says, the perfection of discipline. So I just added the word moral discipline. The perfection of discipline is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to transcend all the restricted and lower states of existence and to ripen those sentient beings with lax discipline. So to ripen those beings with lax discipline. So does this mean that it removes taboos? Saying, oh, you can't go there, you can't do this, you can't think of that, because you'll fall prey to it. Or does it mean, well, you can do this, you can examine this and not fall prey to it if you maintain the correct attitude, if you maintain the right purity, if you're developing the right moral aspect to this and be able to examine that which we might call immoral Or does it mean that we just cross our fingers and say, oh no, we can't go there?
Lance, what do you mean? Like go to a nightclub, go to a bar? What do you mean?
Yeah, anything, there's a point at which we want to stay away from those things that may seduce us.
Hmm.
But at some point, can we attain the moral character, authority, the moral responsibility or whatever, the discipline, that we can be subjected to those things, but not fall prey to them?
Yeah, 100% you can.
And
Absolutely.
is there an inherent freedom in being able to accomplish that?
Yeah. Yeah. Alcoholics, sorry, excuse me, I don't mean that so rudely, can go into a bar and not drink. And they're very absorbed and concentrated just as a relatable stimuli, like as a substance. They can return to the environment that was hard for them to socialize for some event or something, as an example, as a practical example. To me, the answer is yes. It just requires you have to remove yourself from it, have a contrast condition of this is what it feels like not to be in this. You can almost detox from whatever those things are for you, because each of us have our weak links, and then put yourself back in it with single-minded focus and recognize what it is. It's a poison. Recognize this is a poison, and I'm making a delineation with my intellect and intelligence to not participate. At that point, you've evolved into your intelligent mind, beyond being just superficially distracted. Like your ego isn't in need for these quick hits.
And there's another level that we can look at this too. And when we study the six human realms, and in each one of the six human realms, there was a Buddha who was there to lead those beings, to give them peace for at least a moment, so that they could recognize their causes and conditions of being in the realm that they are in. But those Buddhas were in the realm itself and were not seduced by those realms, were not caught up. They didn't lose their Buddhahood because they were working with those beings in the hell realms or the hungry ghost realms, etc.
And that's where, coming back to a larger part of this and reading this whole intentionality of helping others, and I believe maybe also this is relatable. I believe like to a point, I have to pull myself out of certain environments right now, only to become stronger to go back into them for the benefit of other sentient beings. And I've gained that discernment in the last several months, where I've had to pull back with intentionality. It's not haphazard. It's very, very focused with the behaviors, knowing that I'm going to go back in, and that these negative, whatever, maras or whatever, however they come, that I can still deflect them. You call it suit of armor, I think, and whatever form they come, and hold to positive mindfulness, and hold to my personal morality, despite all of it. So this resonates really well with me, which is why I was fascinated with each sentence ending and the ripening of other sentient beings. And now I understand it from a practical perspective. We have a responsibility, if we have this gift, to put ourselves back into it, to show people the glimpse of there's another way to live.
Right. And as we move forward on talking about these, we'll see that there is a maintenance to this. That once there is a perfect view, it may not be stable, and we can't take it for granted that we've mastered this. So I think that's expressed a little bit further into these other elements of the six perfections. So let's go to the next one then. It says, the perfection of patience is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to relinquish malice, aggression, anger, pride, arrogance, and conceit, and to ripen those sentient beings that harbor malice. So malice being hatred, right? So this patience to be able to relinquish this, to make the choice, and to be able to endeavor to continue to work for the benefit of others. Yes, Kunga.
So I just wanted to add on to what Zara was saying for the previous one. There is a sutra, specific sutra reference to to that idea you were just talking about. Attending places where people are engaged in activities which you would say are unskillful or unwholesome, as a means to kind of help those people to see a model for something different. The Vimalakirti Sutra, the Holy Teachings of Vimalakirti. He's a layperson bodhisattva. It's an interesting, sutra, because all the Buddha, Vimalakirti gets sick, and the Buddha sends his different disciples to go see him, try to go see him because he's not feeling well, to make him feel better. And they all refuse to go see him because they've had different discussions with Vimalakirti, and he's showed them how their views were limited, and they didn't have the full view of the Buddha Dharma. So none of them want to go see Vimalakirti because they're embarrassed. So finally, one of them does go. But anyways, one of the stories about Vimalakirti is that he goes to bars and into places of ill repute, gambling places. He goes every place, but he doesn't engage in the unskillful behavior. He just goes there to help other people find a way out. So I just wanted to provide that sutra reference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lance, have you ever done something like that as a social experiment with a body camera on? Kunga, I'm nominating Kunga. He's very interested in doing this, I can tell.
Well, let's say every day. Every day. If we're active people who is engaged in society, I mean, there's all kinds of temptation and everything. You turn the TV on, you open up your cell phone, these ads that are on the cell phone, the ads that are on TV, they're all very seductive, aren't they? They prey on that, whether it's sex or whether it's having possessions, a new car, whether it's clothing, all these different things all the time.
It goes back to what that movie that you played for us a couple nights ago, the documentary, The 20 Questions. Remember where they said, I think one of the questions was, it's scary once you realize that the mass media is programming consciousness for most people. That's really profound and scary at the same time. You
absolutely.
Never actually get into your actual thought, because you're so sensory distracted and someone else is telling you to be angry at Donald Trump or hate him or be addicted to some reality. And you never know yourself and your body, you never know who you are. It's so scary, Lance, when you think about it. It's really scary.
Yeah, if you think about it, that there's a ring through the nose and there's a tether, that is being pulled and pulling us along by our nose, by Mara, pulling us in all these different directions and so on. Absolutely. And we have to not only break the tether, but we have to remove the ring in the nose.
I just want to go live on a farm, Lance.
and heal ourselves, because we've all been damaged. We can't, we've all had this illness and we've all been damaged, and we need to heal ourselves from that. And there's still going to be some scar tissue. We have to recognize that as well, to use this metaphor of illness and healing and so on. And, the scar tissue can be stronger than the original tissue, but at the same time, it can be very brittle. So yes, being aware of all these things, being able to identify all these things, is being on the path. So this moral discipline, this relates to the lax discipline, it says here, and then the next one, the patience, was in relation to, in particular, the hatred, the malice that we hold for others and so on, and we can hold for ourselves. People can get angry at themselves and hold that, and that becomes the root that everything else then comes out of, is their basic hatred for themselves, and the way they act and the way they do things just becomes products of that. So we have to learn to love ourselves, to be able to recognize ourselves as as liberated, as being human being who has these precious qualities and so on, and that we need to seize the opportunities to be able to cultivate that more, to make it grow, to make it stronger, and like the gardener analogy. Any comments before we move on to the next one? All right, so the next one is number 90 of the 108 that we're talking about, is the perfection of diligence, is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to practice all virtuous endeavors and to ripen those sentient beings that are lazy. So being lazy, can mean that we begin to take things for granted, that we're not doing the practices, we're not being mindful, and we can slip back into confusion. The analogy I always think of is the analogy of the lotus flower. That the seed is at the bottom of the ocean, and the seed sprouts, and the flower comes up. The lotus flower comes up, and I imagine, because I have a very love for the Hindu tradition, and they show Krishna lying in the lotus flower above the ocean of suffering, but then, not that they show that, but and I think of myself sometimes as having, I'm laying in this great perfection, but sometimes my hand just gets lazy and falls back into the ocean, or my leg falls back into the ocean. And if I'm not careful, I can lose my balance and just tip over the lotus flower, and my entire body goes back into the ocean. So my point here is to visualize oneself in this lotus, and having to maintain that lotus position. Once you attain it, doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be able to stabilize that all the time without work.
That's a great image.
Yeah, so as long as we're breathing, as long as we're in this phenomenal nature, long as we're a human being, we can fall prey to moving sidewards or backwards, or we can direct ourselves with the right intention to continue to move forward. Yes, Gunga.
So following on that image, traditionally the lotus grows up from the mud, but is not defiled. And if you think about, the lotus is really dependent on the mud. The lotus couldn't exist without the mud.
That's right.
So all these things that happen to us in life that are possibly defilements or things that take us off the path, our loss of diligence is just our forgetting that we can transform those things. Our loss of diligence is just forgetting to take whatever that challenge is and turn it into the path, like to transform it like the lotus transforms the mud. Thank you.
Right. And to add to that we have to transform it and sustain it.
Constant transformation.
I would just add that in the jewel ornament text that Kenshin translated diligence as joyous effort. So we need to remember that the reason why the bodhisattva is diligent is because he takes great joy in his practice. For him, I suppose you could say it's his hobby or his avocation. He doesn't do it because he has to or he's getting paid to. He does it because it's his wish to do it. He enjoys doing it. And that's where the diligence springs from.
Thank you. Did he specifically say advocation? Advocation?
Joyous effort is what he translated diligence as. So,
but not the avocation. In other words, it can be your vocation.
No, that's my addition. That's
I see.
my opinion. That's not what he said.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that there are things you do because you enjoy doing them, and in the West, usually we consider those things our hobbies. We generally, well, some people do enjoy their work to a certain extent, but the things you do solely because you enjoy them, usually you consider your hobbies. So for the bodhisattva, getting enlightenment is kind of his hobby or his avocation, not his vocation.
Well, what would his vocation be?
Well, whatever he needs to do to survive. Generally, it's to be a monk if he's a monastic, or if he's a lay bodhisattva, whatever job he happens to have. Like for me, since I took the bodhisattva vow, my vocation was to be a computer programmer. And I did enjoy that, but to be honest, well, I guess I put about equal effort into both, my practice and my job. I put a lot of effort into, well, you have to finish the nundro. It's a lot of work. You're not going to get through it unless you try to get through it. So it's not something you can do casually. So you put a lot of effort into it, but you put in a lot of effort into it because that's what you want to do. It's your enjoyment at that.
Well, I think it's an interesting question, avocation or vocation. And, the question always comes to me is, if the proverbial, alien comes down out of the spaceship and says, well, who are you? What are you? And you have to explain yourself. How do you explain yourself? Well, I'm a human being. Well, I'm this. Well, I'm that. Well, I work for other beings. Well, I work as a computer programmer. Oh, I work as an electrician. What's the order in which you prioritize your relative existence? And where do you place being a bodhisattva? Yes, Kunga.
So I think ideally you would take your bodhisattva aspiration and put that into your vocation, no matter what your vocation is.
So it
Because
permeates everything.
Yeah, all of our vocations have the ability to benefit other beings. Thich Nhat Hanh said even a man who was involved in developing nuclear science that was being used to create nuclear bombs, he told him, don't quit your job, because maybe you can develop a way that they would use that technology that would be less harmful to living beings than someone else who came into that job and didn't care and would be just developing nuclear weapons for the wrong reason. So thank you.
Thank you. Have you seen Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, today is, I was reading lasers. We've got battlefield lasers now. They're pretty much, that's what the Defense Department is saying, that it's kind of, and that they're using it right now. It is, you're right. I work for the government, and the good part is it's the Environmental Protection Agency. The bad part is it's budget, so it's not fun. I don't get to go out there and help crabs in the Chesapeake Bay. It is definitely my vocation. Is it the most important thing about me? Oh, hell no. It never has. So if I was talking to an alien, I really would lead with, I'm trying to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, and completely unironically, that's really what I want. But it's going to be a while until, I'm not working and can devote more time to it. It's nice to, I'm glad they're linking it to ripening other beings. At first I was looking and I was like, well, how, and I'm still, how are we defining ripening, and what's the mechanism of action on ripening? I wish we had somebody who could look at the original translation for us. But that's also a really good point that, you know, as you're practicing, as you're doing these things, generosity, patience, you know, what can you do to shorten the time that the people who are driving you crazy, the time that they have to spend here feeling miserable and making your life miserable? It's a really good point. We're doing this for them anyway, and it's, you know, in the budget meeting I have tomorrow, it's gonna be like, yeah, it'll be a challenge to, you know, practice these things in terms of, you know, they're just difficult people, and that's just the way life is if you work for the government. Well, just like how timely it is personally, but also, yeah, I mean, as we're doing this, you know, whatever we can, however we can contribute in terms in, you know, including things like just, you know, compassionate, you know, warm feelings, trying to recognize that nobody there is having a good day because we're all suffering in samsara. And, um, you know, can you influence these people to, when they get off the conference call, they act like better beings, you know, they act more in Torah, they don't know what the Dharma is, but just act in, you know, according to your true nature. Can you just give these people just like a second of, you know, complete acceptance and calm? So lots to think about.
All right, well, thank you. I'd like to point out, you know, on this question of the translation of this book and other books like this from 84,000, if you go to the page that is opposite the introduction page in this book that you have, are the acknowledgments of who translated this and the committee that worked on this and the monastics that answered, you know, the difficult questions and so on. So my point is, I really think that these folks have really taken a lot of time and probably asked the same questions that we're asking and had the same doubts that we're having. And the best that they could do is what has been printed here. We may not be ready to accept that because of all different kinds of reasons. But I would take it that their best effort to be able to define this, to translate this, has been done for us. And it's a question of us to meditate on it, to contemplate it, etc. Wear it for a while and see how it is. All right, so if we can turn our attention now to the 91st of these, 91 is the next line, which says, the perfection of concentration is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it enables one to give rise to all states of equipoise and super knowledge, and to ripen those sentient beings that are distracted. So to give rise to all states of equipoise. So equipoise, you know, equipoise doesn't have to be 50-50. There can be 60-40. There can be 40-60. There can be 80-20. There can be 90-10. There can be all these different, you know, levels of equipoise and so on. And it can be multi, you know, it doesn't have to be a dualistic. It can be, you know, 3 items being weighed, 4 items, you know, different points of view all simultaneously. And the super knowledges. So it begs the question of what the super knowledges are. So I don't know if it's in this glossary or not, but in one of the other glossaries I know, the 6 super knowledges are worth looking at. C-R-P-E-R. Now, it's not in this glossary. It's one of the other glossaries I looked at. But here are the 6 super knowledges: divine sight, divine hearing, ability to know past and future lives, the ability to know the mind of others, and the ability to produce miracles. Those are the 6 super knowledge. Oh, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3. There's 5 super knowledges. Excuse me. 5 super knowledges. So that's something that, whether a yogi or a bodhisattva develops, for an ordinary practitioner, somebody, a beginner, that's going to be, we're not going to be able to know that. We're not going to be able to master that. But I think it's always good. They print this for us as a road sign to say, oh, here's where you'd like to go, and here's some of the stuff that comes along with that you want to know, that you want to go to. So it was divine sight, divine hearing, the ability to know past and future lives, the ability to know the mind of others, and the ability to produce miracles. So I think that's quite provocative. Yes, Kunga.
Yeah, when you read through that list, it made me think that we could understand these things as divine sight, like the ability to see through walls, right? Or we could just think of this as divine sight as the ability to see things as they really are, without our prejudice. We could think of divine hearing as the ability to hear things from 100 miles away. But we could also think of divine hearing as the ability to hear what is actually said versus our preconception about what should be said or why this person is saying that. We could think about knowing past and future lives as being able to know all our previous lives and all our future lives, through reincarnation. Or we could just think of this as being able to understand the lives of our parents and the lives of our grandparents, the lives of Western civilization, in the past, how those things have developed, what that history is about. And we could use our mind to think about where things are going to lead in the future and what things might develop. And so you could go through the next 4 and 5 in the same way, I think. And just, you can think of these things as divine miracles, like, supernatural miracles, but we could also think of them maybe as more abilities to look at things from a transcendental perspective, which is maybe for us Westerners, maybe sometimes easier to take in. Like, they can either be just like magical powers you inherit from practicing your Buddhism really well, or they could be deeper levels of perception of the way things really are, and there's nothing really magical about them. Thank you.
Yeah, it's relative, What are we to our pets? What do they think? How's he know I'm hungry? He's feeding me. How does he know I want to go out for a walk? He must have some divine powers. My owner,
Have any of you all had experiences with some of these things, I guess, and maybe even a bit of a more of the literal interpretation of them with I don't know whether, I mean, it could be with yourselves or with like teachers you've known, or where you've seen these type of but what makes me think of this kind of, because I'm always very skeptical of these type of things, of course, but also like the story of like Ram Dass and his guru and other teachers and or other even Buddhist teachers, where they'll witness, and what's hard for me to reconcile is I'm skeptical of the ideas, but at the same time I believe these people when they're telling me that, like, or some people like Ram Dass, for example, I believe him when he's telling me you know, when he says these things, or many, many other people who met his guru named Crowley Baba, or you know, or I've even heard, you know, people mention with Garchen Rinpoche being able to kind of know their mind in a very literal sense, in a more literal sense or something. Has anyone had experience with something like that?
I think Bernie turned his microphone on. Did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, but not specifically about this question. What I was going to turn my microphone on is traditionally the achievement of these superior abilities is connected with the practice of samadhi, and that people who master the practice of samadhi find that they develop these abilities. Now, I think what you'll find most commonly in many Buddhist groups is people feel that when the teacher is talking to them, they answer the question they had in their mind, but didn't want to ask. So you ask them one question, and they will give you an answer that not only is for the question you asked, but the question that you didn't ask. And I've heard that quite a few times from people in different Buddhist talks, that the teacher seemed to know what I was thinking when I asked that question. Now, that could just be psychology. You know, it's really not hard to guess sometimes what somebody's really thinking, but it could also be the ability to read minds. And I have heard stories about teachers seeing things at a distance, but I don't remember them well enough to pass them on. And okay, the one story that I remember very well is that this is a story about Khenpo Kartar, who was abbot at the monastery in Woodstock, New York. He was visiting Taiwan, and one of his students was he found out that one of his students was in the hospital, and it was too far away for him to go to directly. For some reason, traffic or something. He didn't have enough time on his schedule to go visit this person. So what he did was he excused himself and he went into a quiet room to meditate. And the person in the hospital later said, "Oh, Rinpoche came and visited me." So some sort of art of bilocation or something like that. There are other stories, but I just can't remember them right now. They're not that important, but I think we ought to realize that there's more to reality than you hear on the evening news, and keep our minds open to stuff like this. Although in the larger scheme of things, these abilities are not considered that important. So, for what it's worth.
So this is why it's called phenomena.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, they didn't choose the word phenomena, phenomenal nature by accident. There's just a lot of things that defy logic and everyday explanation, but yet are happening every day, and so on like that. How it happens, you know, one man's theory is as good as another man's theory. You know, is it the transference of energy, you know, halfway across the world, you know, from one person to another? And, you know, there's all kinds of possibilities, you know, this synergy of being in this life, of this continuum and all these different ways in which we express it. So yeah, I think all these are possible and are happening all the time. And I think, you know, I've thought of my daughter, you know, she lives 3,000 miles away, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and it's her, you know, and I think we've all had experiences like that, you know. Is it a chaotic thing that happens? Is it a random thing that happens? Or is there a transference of energy that is happening? It's phenomenal, and just enjoy it the way I look at it, and I don't question it. That's how I enjoy it, not questioning it. Otherwise, you can drive yourself crazy. Oh, it's valid. Oh, no, he says it's invalid. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ultimately important. I think for me, it holds some value to. I don't really like things like this. Don't really bother me like they used to, or like things I would stir over, or things I don't, um, or doubts or anything. But for me, the some of the value in it of even hearing stories like that and contemplating these things a little bit is in the spirit I think of some of what Bernie was saying is it does kind of jar loose a little bit my preconceptions about reality that I think can be limiting and seem yeah and well I'll just leave it at that.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, I'll never, this is the one time I'll say anything from Shakespeare. Shakespeare does not ever get quoted here, and it was in Hamlet. There are more things on heaven and earth, in heaven and earth, than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of. It's just a beautiful way of saying, yeah, everyone's experience is like we don't know.
Amen. Thank you. All right, so then we move on to the next point, number 92. So, before we go to this perfection of concentration was meditative concentration, and before we get to meditative concentration, we got to get to excuse me, what's the word? Meditation, contemplation, just regular contemplation, contemplative concentration, thinking a problem through, thinking something through, using critical thinking, developing one-pointed mindfulness, and then having a system by which to do that. In the beginning, our mind is just going like the monkey inside the head and everything, monkey thoughts just going, and we have to harness that. And so we start using, the rituals, and we start using the tools that we have, the mala beads, and we use the prayers and so on like that to start harnessing that mind to do that. And then we start thinking about the what this means, and so we start contemplating that concentration. We're getting deeper and we're deeper, and then we start getting into the meditative concentration, where we can say that we're applying these spiritual aspects to it, but then all of a sudden the thoughts just seem to just go away, and we're just in this period of blissful quiet for some period of time, this quietude, that we don't even realize it until a thought comes to us that kind of wakes us up out of that. So this perfection of concentration is each of those things in their successive levels that lead us through these different states of balance. And we go through these different states of balance at different portions of where we are along that continuum, of developing meditative concentration, of developing one-pointed mindfulness, of developing critical thinking, and so on. So we have to make the choice to engage in that. It's not going to come to us by itself. I don't think so. Maybe somebody can, maybe somebody has the karma that it seems to it comes to them at a very early stage. A 15-year-old kid who just has this spiritual knowledge, this spiritual understanding that, somebody who's 80 or 90 years old, lived their whole life, is just beginning to apprehend. And here's a 15-year-old kid, and maybe it's explained through their karma. And the rest of their life now, they are going to be a great influence in a great many people's lives because they knew it, at such an early age, and they have so many opportunities to help so many beings and so on. So my point is that we're using this concentration not for our benefit. We're using it to help others who are distracted. How do we use this concentration to help others? Can we, when we say that we see somebody who is doing something bad, whatever level that might be, but we don't feel qualified to go tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, do you know what you're doing? I know you're doing bad. Do you know what you're doing? Maybe that's not the right thing to do with a guy that's got a gun in his hand or a knife in his hand or something like that, that's about to do something bad. But the one thing you can do is really try and concentrate on your heart center and send compassion to that person. It sounds crazy. It sounds phenomenal. But isn't that what we're talking about? Where someone may have that kind of power. Maybe we have that kind of power if we're able to harness it. I think we were talking last week, I think we mentioned the idea that it only takes 15% of our brain to do all the functionality that we do, but 85% is all this supernatural stuff or whatever, and getting into that supernatural stuff where we can affect somebody like in that way. Personally, I subscribe to that.
I mean,
Yeah, I
Lance,
have to.
Yes, Alex.
I wanted to. Sorry, I just wanted to add last time that if you look at the structure of the brain and that thing that's on top, the one that's we think that does the thinking, right? When you look at it, in essence, it's actually not the thing that actually does the thinking. A lot of it is something that suppresses the brain activity. So it's like it's a control mechanism. It's something that stops unneeded activity, stops spontaneous activity, and allowing only what activity is proper and needed. And a lot of animals lack that, but we have if we can use it. Just to reinforce what you said.
I was just trying to understand. So you're saying the natural state of the mind is to be open and to be free and to be compassionate, but it's the thoughts that interrupt that. Is that correct?
It's more like our lower mind is like is activity that happens on autopilot, and it can be a lot of different kind of activities in the brain. But what makes it a higher mind is those this part of the brain that is actually suppresses the activity or slows down the activity. There are two kind of neurons. I should first say, remind that there are two kind of neuron cells in our brains. One's excitatory neurons, the one that keeps generating pulses, and the other one is inhibitory neurons, those that stop the pulses, to the stop neurons to fire, suppress them. And so they both should be in balance. But the higher the stage of evolution of sentient being, the more of those inhibitory neurons are there, and the more the highly they're organized, so to speak.
Well, that's very interesting.
So when we develop our diligence and discipline, that we develop that part of the brain that actually is inhibitory neurons that 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 allow only activity to happen that is beneficial, or that is, I mean, whatever, more guided.
So excuse me for talking beyond my level that I should talk, but there's a physiology to this.
Right. Even when you look at the emblem of Society for Neuroscience, well, at least a couple years ago, it was like yin and yang symbol, and yin, one part of it was this excitatory neuron, and the other part was inhibitory neuron, and they work with each other to generate consciousness, if you want.
Okay, very good. Well, I think that is a discussion for many hours, if not years.
Yeah, but Alex, if you can get us a reading list, that would, I'm not joking. That sounds very interesting.
Yes.
Anything you can, any info, like any way you could point us at it, because understanding your brain is really important to getting control over it.
Well, isn't that what we're doing? I mean, isn't that what our meditation teachings are all about, to get control of that?
Well, yeah, but you need every tool. And
So when we're doing that, Alex, are we're controlling the which of those neurons are we controlling?
Well, I think when we engage in Buddhist practices, most, I mean, from my perspective, from what I realize now, is mostly we training this part of neural network in our brains that is not generating these impulses, but like controlling them, suppressing those, suppressing those that not needed, and allow, and allowing activity that can happen. And now there is like the latest in neuroscience kind of theory is this notion of criticality, critical state of brain, of this brain network, where everything is balanced just right, so no unnecessary activity is happening. But when it's needed, it happens only when it's needed. All right. So, and then there is like avalanche of activity, and then it stops and waits for next cycle where next something else is needed. So it stores the energy and remains quiet, but then something happens, and then action happens, and then again it quickly stops. So it's kind of like the related to our kind of state of Lord mindfulness, mindful concentration, where we not thinking anything, but we perceiving, we receiving input, but when we react, only when it's really needed.
Kunga, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I think that that's been my experience with sitting meditation, is that over time, my brain has learned to repress or suppress those sensations from my body that make me want to stretch or move around or fidget or get itchy and all those things, so that it's much easier for me to just sit and be comfortable in my posture and not have to be distracted by those normal body responses. When you're normally, you're walking around and you're sitting in a meeting, you're constantly fidgeting and move around. So it's been my experience that the meditation has helped me to, where I don't feel as responsive. That makes sense that would be inhibiting them. And then it seems like makes sense that it would go in the same way with thoughts, that as I'm being aware of my breathing and I'm Just being aware of the presence, that I'm triggering transmitters that prevent just random thoughts from popping in. Like I have less experience of that. So that all makes sense to me. That's been my experience as well. Thank you.
Zara, you've been writing a number of things, and for myself, I can't read and listen to this all at the same time, but it looks like you were saying something good. Would you like to comment?
I was just kind of because Alex, I understood what you were saying, like because I love all the brain stuff, and basically I was just saying is what I think is from a biological perspective, the physical body wants to survive, and so all of like the lower brain, right, not the heart mind, but this is like constantly seeking for things in the limbic system through the sense organs just from our biology. And then as we've evolved through like centuries, we've gotten these complicated ego-driven technologies, like you said, the marketing. Now we know who to hate. Like all these things now have now made us sensory addicts, not just for survival, because there's no lion chasing us anymore. It's a smartphone. And so those things, it requires a great deal of concentration to the point of this part of the sutra to suppress the urges from the sense organs. So I'll give a really quick example. How many of you, when you feel the need to scratch an itch, can suppress the urge, can work through the pain and discomfort of the need to itch, like a mosquito lands and bites on you? Right? Or you can feel the sneeze, but you can suppress it. You have control of that sense. Once you can do simple things like that, then you've actually tapped into, you are super aware of what's happening at a sensory level, at the biological. So I think going back to what the original question was, is that it's incredibly effortful to override like the basic biology, because our bodies are designed to please keep us alive. And then our egos come in at a certain point and are like, we want to survive because of these 8 worldly concerns. Past a certain age, like 8, when we are like realize how to navigate the environment, now it's like, oh, I need social attention. I need to gain items. Now I need to live for other reasons other than just biological survival. And so the sense organs then take a secondary function of looking for threats in different ways. Oh, that boss just wrote a nasty email, right? Versus I'm afraid of the barking dog at age 3. Now it's the barking supervisor at age 30, right? So that's, I think in spirit of what Alex was trying to say, I think the concentration and working through these stages, that's what I was trying to get at. I basically understood what Alex was trying to communicate. And Alex, if I'm way off, I'm sorry if I've misunderstood the science. I'm not nearly as trained as you are in understanding it all.
Oh, no, perfectly, yes. You're right. And there are different levels to that. You're pointing out that there is like sensory kind of like whatever they call limbic level, subconscious. But then there is also kind of higher consciousness level, that kind of survival on a societal level, and so on and so forth, rather than just physical level. So yes, there also we should think about these other aspects as well.
Okay, well, let's we only have a little bit of time, so let's see if we can tackle this next one with not too much trouble. So this is number 92. It says, the perfection of knowledge. So in the 6 paramitas, it's often referred to as wisdom awareness. The perfection of knowledge, wisdom awareness, is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it enables ones to relinquish the dark fog of ignorance and stupidity, to abandon incorrect views, and to ripen sentient beings with incorrect knowledge. So this perfection of knowledge is not this necessarily the absolute knowledge, but more, fundamentally is the phenomenal knowledge, the knowledge of phenomena that we deal with every day and so on. The perfection of this knowledge is a gateway that if we don't understand things, that we dig in and try and understand them. We try and find the right teachers, find the right friends to be able to bounce ideas off of, to find the right books, to just not accept that we don't know, or that we've created some kind of a delusional lie for ourselves that we hide in, thinking that we've got this all sussed out. And then, so we're doing that for ourselves, and then in turn we're able to help that to ripen sentient beings with their incorrect knowledge. Because we've been able to do it for ourselves, we can say, oh, we can help turn that light on for other people so that they can correct themselves.
This passage is dear to my heart because in my mind, that's what science is doing mostly, hopefully.
Well, I think so. And I think that, that's one of the good things about, having a smartphone or a computer or anything, that there is a lot of information about a lot of scientific, things and technology, and whether it's psychology or it's regular medicine or whatever, that, a layperson can have access to it and try and understand it if they're willing to make the effort to seek it and try and work at it to understand it. Just Gunga.
I was kind of reading this more narrowly, as to think of this as just the ignorance of, that relates to, the Buddhist ideas of ignorance, ignorance of suffering, ignorance of impermanence, ignorance of non-self, and the incorrect views maybe having to do with views that are more traditionally thought of as incorrect as far as Buddhism, like the incorrect view that nothing matters, or the incorrect view that we only have our actions in life don't have repercussions. Like, those, I was thinking this, when I read this originally, I thought of it as more of a narrow interpretation related to Buddhist ideas of knowledge, specifically the Dharma specifically.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. I look at it as a bigger picture. Once again, going back to the people who did the translation on this, maybe they left it big and open so that all these things can fit in there.
I was just thinking especially because it ends us saying ripen beings with incorrect knowledge.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't really, I feel like it doesn't matter if you don't know the correct history of the United States. Like if you have a biased interpretation of what happened during the Civil War, what really matters is, what are you doing right now? What are you thinking right now? How are you what are your perceptions of what's going on right now, and how do they connect with what's really happening? So I think that knowledge is, and generally in Buddhist thoughts, we preference that knowledge of being able to appreciate reality as it really is right now, both in the mundane and also the transmundane, visions, versus a knowledge of how does your car work. I mean, there's so much, you can never know all the knowledge in the world. So we're kind of shrinking it down to the knowledge that's really important to our spiritual practice, the knowledge of, how to develop our spirituality. And it doesn't matter how a car works. So there's lots of knowledge in the world. You can never know it all. And it's kind of a fool's errand to kind of know it all. It's hard enough just to know the spiritual parts of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have a comment about Kunga's comment?
I just want to say, to me, it sounds like less of a history interpretation, but like passage, but more just about phenomena that happens to us and we don't understand them quite well. and we make our own stories about them. Like, for example, the solar eclipse that recently happened. Like in ancient times, people thought that, gods were getting angry, and that's why the sun was cutting out. And they would start, some kind of sacrifices and cutting each other's hearts out, and, and lots of blood flowing. But today we think, oh, this is just a very predictable thing, and we all come out and have a lot of fun, uh, just try not to burn our retinas staying at the sun. That's all, right? So I mean, I think a lot of like foolish things that people do, just because of pure ignorance. They don't really know what's going on. They make up stories about this, and that creates a lot of troubles for everybody.
Well, I think maybe it's an understatement to say, but everything that happens in the macrocosm is happening in the microcosm, and vice versa. And to think of exclusive thoughts that this is only in this realm or this is only in that realm and has no bearing on the other, I think, that becomes a limited or a limitless mind. And our goal is to have neither, is to transcend this human condition that we have, this human life. In this life, can we do it and stabilize it? Well, we work at it to try and do that. When we drop this body, we're thrust into that bardo of reality, and only maybe to come back into it, maybe at a higher level, but nevertheless to re-engage until we can perfect what it is to be a human being, in order that we may recognize the spirituality within a human being. And that does not deny the human being. A human being is a spiritual being. So to see it as the microcosm and the macrocosm simultaneously.
Yeah, I know I say it a lot, but the Buddha did tell us that looking at what's around you, looking at what's inside you, and figuring out the patterns using logic and reasoning, those were the things that are going to get us there. We were capable. That's his point. Humans have the proper equipment to understand this, to take apart all the layers and to see through things through logic and reasoning. So I'm definitely on Alex's side on that. I think it's logical. I think everything, it's not haphazard. Like none of it is, right? This universe doesn't seem to be very well planned in a certain way. But once it sprang into life, it operates on its own internal logic, which is really, really complicated. But it takes a lot of effort to, if I drop this pencil, it's going to go heading towards the center of the earth, right? That's what he wants to do. There are these things. It's like, there are serious limitations to this. It's like the Matrix. It's not inherently real, but it is a really good place to start unraveling it. So I'd have to agree.
That makes me think of, do we have to understand how it works to enjoy it?
Well, everybody has their own paths. I mean, again, look at Garchen Rinpoche. He didn't go to university. He was caught up in, he was caught up in a revolt, basically. And he's not stupid at all, but he always says, oh, I don't have really good education like Gampu Samdu, because he didn't have the time for that. Right? He was thrown, in a labor camp for 20 years, and then he came out and he looked around and saw that, the Drikung Kagyu was practically non-existent because the monasteries were, destroyed and the people were killed. And he said, no, it's not going to work that way. I'm going to build it back up. Does he have wisdom? Yes, he does. And that was his capacity. Somebody like me is just gonna get a degree in physics just because it just helps understand things. It's not, there's no right or wrong here. Right? It's just what gets you there.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? We only have a few minutes left. Does anybody have anything that you'd like to say to tie things up? Has this been helpful? These are the 6 paramitas. These are the 6 perfections, the 6 perfections of wisdom. This is, and it's just 6 that are being identified here, but, behind when we look at the tree, the lineage tree, that behind the lineage tree is all this knowledge, is all this wisdom, or all the books that are layered in there. If you look at that picture over Kunga's shoulder there, that's what all those books represent, this perfection of wisdom, and so, how much do we engage with it? How much of it do we just say, okay, I'll just let it rest, at least for now. But it's good to know that it's there. But meantime, I still got a lot of things to enjoy today. Kunga, you were going to say something.
Yeah, like you said, it's the 6 perfections, and I think we've talked about the idea of your bodhicitta being like a multifaceted jewel in your heart center, and each of these perfections is like a facet of that jewel. We've talked about that with the idea of the foregrounds with the 4 immeasurables, but I think you could also apply that to 6 paramitas, and there is 10 paramitas as well. And number 7, and skillful means this is the 7th on the way to 10. I'm not sure why they don't have all 10 there. And because it's talking about the perfection, the bodhicitta, and they're specific to Buddhism, that's what makes me think about this idea of knowledge being related basically to the Buddha Dharma. And you can certainly apply your Buddhist intention to any field of knowledge, and you can, in any field of knowledge is more understandable, I think, when you consider cause and effect and impermanence and no self. I think those things apply to every field of knowledge. It helps you to understand physics. It helps you, especially when you get to really small physics and things seem to not have, more obviously have all these things going on. But it also helps you to understand physiology and how people get old and people die, how people are different from when they're children to an adult, and why car engines work and what makes them function and why they don't function without gas. I mean, it's all has to do with causes and conditions, impermanence and no self. And I think that, those are the parts of the knowledge that really help us in all of our endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Anybody else have a comment?
Lance, I was just going to say, for me, like, to wrap up this really briefly, was I think all this comes down to you have to have intentionality that you want enlightenment. Like, it's very, to me, it comes down to this very simple aspect of intentionality. Do you want this, going back to like the accumulation of, do I read this book today? Do I not? Do I go, take time, 20 minutes to read sutras? it comes down to ultimately, do you value enlightenment over value the ego-driven human existence? Like, and that's discernment each person has within their karma to make that path. They have, like, comes to a point where you can sit on the fence or make a distinction on the road you're going. And so I think everyone here obviously has that distinction, but I think for me to answer the question you just posed to the group, the answer is you should be reading spiritual books as much as possible when you have time. It should be your hobby. That's it's easy for me to discern that for myself, but that is what I would say to your question.
Okay.
It comes down to intentionality.
That's really good. Thank you. Yes, that's making the choices, right?
I feel like Zara's like a football coach before the big game, the spiritual football coach right here. That was a nice pep talk. You got me fired up, Zara. Sorry.
Come on, that go read.
I'm gonna go read a book or two tonight.
Go team, go. All right. Well, unless somebody else has something you'd like to add, Bernie, would you, your umze this evening, would you do the dedication prayers, please?
We will make this brief because I am tired. So wake up too early and go to sleep too early. By the virtues collected in me in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikung Kagyu, Shri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again soon. This weekend is the Vajrasattva Empowerment. It's going to be on, it's going to be at Drung Muir down in Florida, be on Zoom. And if you look in the WhatsApp, you'll see the information that you need to get there. If you need any help figuring that out, let me know. But it's a great opportunity from a great teacher to get the empowerment of Vajrasattva. So please take advantage of that. Talk to you all soon.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Good night. Thank you,
Thanks,
Alex, everybody.